Hey guys, welcome back to the channel where I cover missing persons, unsolved cases, crime news, and more. Just when we thought we might be done with Sarah Boone, although, let's be real, I don't think that the state of Florida will ever be done with Sarah Boone if she has anything to say about it. She has written an extensive letter. Actually, there's a letter beforehand, in addition, since her sentencing, and the full, unedited version of what she wanted to read at her sentencing. So I'm going to go over it. Her handwriting is usually, she was writing a cursive, and it's usually easier to read. Some of the words are a little, very scratchy for me. It's like she was rushing. And I don't know what she would be rushing from because, really, she's got nowhere to go. So here is the letter that she, there's a forward, like I stated. It was scanned in yesterday to the clerk's website. And for those wondering, well, why is she still sending letters and they're still posting them in Orange County? Well, she has not been moved from the Orange County jail as of yet. And I'm sure they can't wait till that day that happens and she's, moved to Ocala. And in the meanwhile, she's still at 33rd Street in Orlando, Florida. So she's got this dated December 6th, 2024, which we all know was after her sentencing. So her sentencing was on December 2nd. So obviously she went back and decided to write a forward to the Judge Michael Kraynick. Okay, Mr. Michael Kraynick. I am enclosing, please, my complete statement to you and the world, because, she believes the world wants to hear everything that Sarah Boone has to say, as I partially read during my sentencing hearing, by my reserving particular parts of my very true and meaningful statement. I was hoping to have been graced with your forgiveness, understanding, and consideration in any level or degree. For me, unfortunately, and regardless of whom I had speak on my behalf, or the number of your ignorant mind, was already made up. Sarah. She's already going after the judge, and it's not over. She's going to call him ignorant. That's not a really good thing to do, and I realize he's pretty much done with your case, but this is all now public record, which is how we're reading it, and not through a FOIA. And this could conceivably come out at her appeals hearing. So, again, she doesn't know how to hold back, and I believe that, her attorney Owens had her remove some of these parts because it was mostly attacking certain other people, although he let her leave in, the attacking the family. But we need to remember that her attorney is an advisor. She does not have to listen to anything he says, and I don't think she listened to a lot of what he said throughout the trial. All right, let's get back to the letter. By your clear error and full-blown unfair bias against me since your involvement in my crucible case as a whole, I have been unsuccessful in receiving anything from you as a supposed fair and neutral judge, except for your wish that I spend the rest of my life in prison. Well, she's attacking him personally as a judge, and I believe Judge Kraynick was completely fair. He was very patient with her throughout the attorney's process, throughout the pretrial, the trial. I'm sure she sees that he didn't like her, but that, in my opinion, that did not come into play in her sentencing at all. He evaluated, the pre-sentencing investigation by the jail. He went by what the state had to say, what the evidence was, and these letters. He went by everything that was placed before him. I believe he was completely fair, and she just does not understand that by not taking any responsibility and acting at all like she's truly, truly sorry. I mean, why would a judge grant you any sort of, leniency at all in that case? Please know and always remember, Mr. Kraynick, I forgive you. Okay, it's very important that she forgives us all. She makes that clear in her statement. Remember, she wants to let us all know we all have horrible things about us, but she forgives us. So apparently she's really upset with him and she thinks he's an unfair judge, but she forgives him. Still and sincerely. Please understand also the judge, according to Cicero, or she is with one of her other books again, is never to lose sight that he is simply a man and that he cannot exceed the power given to him by his commission. That not only power, but public confidence has been given to him, that he ought always very seriously to attend not to his wishes, but to the requisitions of law, of justice, and religion. Well, I think he did that, but again, you're trying to convince Sarah. I am excited in my appeal. Well, she's excited about something, so that's good, which speaks for itself. My case law as well, in which I am extremely proud to have achieved. I don't know what that means, and will continue doing so now that I am no longer in your corrupt court and free from your malevolent judicial grip. I don't know why I can't say that. Again, by calling his court or referring to him as a corrupt judge, it's not going to give you any positive points and show that you've learned anything, Sarah. It's really, really not. I don't know why she put Sarah Boone versus the state of Florida. I have also added to my statement, as a result of your blindness and impartiality. Okay. Foremost, your disgust in me as being an outspoken woman, determined defendant, and proactive client, hoping the next time you put on your listening ears and do not unfairly oppress the next, as you have so blatantly done me. Well, thankfully, Sarah, you're kind of a special kind of defendant, so I really hope there's not a second Sarah Boone out there, because I don't know if the state of Florida can handle it. You will never admit your many judicial errors, nor will the prosecutors theirs, and I will never admit to what you have wrongfully accused me and judged me as. I am not a murderer, I am a survivor. Sarah Boone. Well, I don't believe the judge made any judicial errors, Sarah. And since you're not obviously very well versed in the law, I remember when he made you pro se, how you were ecstatic that you had an answer to your ad for a lawyer. And I honestly think it was really awesome of James Owens, to do that. And while I disagree with some of the things that he's, way he handled things, I think he's a respectable type of guy, and he was trying to help you out. And I think you ran the show more than he or his team did. And for that, I think you are very, very lucky and even blessed that opportunity came about for you. Because none of us thought that would ever work. And then she goes on to talk about black robe disease, which apparently another dictionary or book she decided to look into. Arrogance in a judge, a slang term for a judge who flaunts judicial power and dominates proceedings at the expense of the disposition of justice. Well, that's not Michael Kraynick, so that's not the judge, so I don't think we have to worry about that issue with him. And I guess you have blinders on or something there, Sarah. Impartiality is the first duty of a judge before he gives an opinion or sits in judgment in a cause. He ought to be certain and absolute that he has no bias for or against either of the parties. If he has any interest, even the not most slightest, in the cause, he is disqualified from sitting as judge, and when aware of such interest, ought to lawfully and justly refuse to sit on a case. The delicacy which characterizes a judge in this country generally forbids their sitting in such a case. Again, I don't believe for a second that Judge Kraynick had a bias or preconceived notion about you. I think that all came as soon as you walked in the door. And he still kept himself very balanced, very professional, and I think he was highly patient with you throughout this entire process, Sarah. The judge must not only be impartial, but must also follow and properly enforce the law, not abuse. He is bound to declare what law is and not make it be an arbitrator, but an interpreter of the law. Well, I think they're just hearing the case, and he's making sure that the parties, the attorneys, follow everything, Sarah, and he's not a cop or anything, so you're a little mixed up on some of this, but that's okay. It is their duty to be patient in the investigation of the case. Again, it's not an investigation by the time it goes to court, Sarah. Understand circumstances and difficulties by all parties, careful in considering parts of the case in a whole, and decent in judgment. Okay, so she's quoting a law dictionary from 2012. Okay. Well, I don't believe he's got any of those problems there, Sarah, so. But at the risk of practicing judicial censorship, I don't know what she's trying to say there, but a word I have coined. Oh, okay. See, so she made up a word. Okay. That sounds like her to me. In this presentation, others have called it black robe disease. Well, that's not a word, Sarah, and I don't think that Webster's or anyone else is going to add it to their websites or books in the near future. Whether he was correct or not in my behavior, it's widely accepted that judicial behavior affects the jury. It does, and he was very impartial. I never saw any sort of bias come out of Judge Kraynick. And then there is the worst of judicial ailments, the black robe disease, which is otherwise known as arrogance. And again, he doesn't have that. Trial judges are affirmatively charged with securing a fair trial and must intervene. It's hard. Again, her handwriting got really crazy here. Intervenes, I guess, via a spont to that end when necessary. I'm not exactly sure what she's saying there. That duty encompasses not only the avoidance of error before it occurs, but the fair correction of error that may have occurred earlier in a proceeding. Again, he took the case over from Judge Wooten, and I think he was completely professional, and he did his job. In the instant case, the trial judge did analyze the evidence he added to it, dealing with a mere mannerism of the accused in giving his testimony. The judge put his own experience with all the weight that could be attached to it in the scale against the accused. Okay, so she looks like she's quoting a case, and that has nothing to do with your case, Sarah. That's just out of nowhere. But okay. All right, now here is her statement. I'm not going to read it all because we heard it before. So I'm going to sift through here and get to the parts where I could see that her attorney took out, and well, at least he got her to agree to take out. Let's put it that way. Remember, she was very, very clear. This is an edited version. She kept saying this is edited, so she wanted to be very clear on that. Let's see here. Yeah, this part was remained in. Where she's attacking George, yet at the same time she says she forgives him. Okay. The attacking of George and his family, I still can't get over, Sarah. I really, really can't. Okay, let's see here. Let's see. Okay, we are sifting. Okay. Okay, then she keeps going here. And I guess she's talking about the family here, so. Alright. And some of this, I believe it may have been pulled out, but this is worth reading again about how she attacks social media and the media. Another great contributor of my gold, remember she's talking about how they, fix, broken bowls with gold, because she figured that this Japanese tradition was such a good example of her problems. Is social media, with its greed, insensitivity, deception, obvious exploitation, and advantageous gain from a minimal case as a whole, and for sentencing me by anticipation as a result of ignorance and hate, conjured and fabricated by the organized crime that is social media, which condemned me in the court of global public opinion since the beginning. First of all, that is a very long sentence, Sarah. Okay? I mean, I feel bad that you didn't go back and at least edit that down a little bit, because, you had the time. But, but honestly, you made your own fodder, okay? You caused your own issues. The videos you took of George in the suitcase telling him to F you, and he's begging for you to let him out because he can't breathe, that basically, it sealed the deal. We all knew you were guilty, whether it was on purpose or not, and you were. It was just a matter of how it all came about. And as far as being exploitation or all that, well, guess what? If you are arrested and make yourself this, especially this, out publicly out there by writing letters and continuously being outspoken, you become a public figure. And remember, also, you're in jail, so your rights, as far as some of that's concerned, is very minimal. My family law case is the new prey, waiting to be picked apart and pillaged from me, being made infamous by social media in my criminal case. It simply seems I cannot forgive and be forgiven and move forward. Well, the problem is, Sarah, you say the words, but we don't believe you mean them, and you don't. Okay? You can say you're sorry, say I forgive, or what, all this stuff you want to spew out of your mouth, but actions speak louder than words. I don't believe you are really sorry, and you don't take responsibility for anything, so that's a big problem. It really truly is. Social media has made me a pariah. It caused great oppression and undeniable disadvantages, especially by broadcasting and manipulating my case online. Well, I think in some way that kind of did benefit you when you went pro se to get, James Owen. So if you put it this way, it kind of did come back to help you in a way, just putting that out there. In my criminal case, as a result, my opportunities to be given a fair, proper, and uninfluenced, successful conclusion was heavily depleted and poisoned. I forgive them. Well, a lot of people, Sarah, and I can say this because I live in West Orange County, okay? And if you've watched my stuff, or have heard about it, I'm sure you have, because you seem to know a lot of stuff. It's a lot of people in this area don't really know your case. So I believe completely that the jury was not aware of your case, or if they were, it was barely. So trust me, someone like myself or anyone else who had been following your case would not have been put on the jury, and they were not. So I don't believe that social media caused you any sort of, lack of justice, or, a fair trial at all. Not at all. Also, all the media tycoons for not having a life of their own. Well, the media does report the news for their job, so okay. Trying so desperately to make themselves seem so right by making me appear so wrong. Well, it was not hard because you were wrong. Forgiveness for prejudgment, ridiculous theatrics, lies, making and taking blood, money from my and others' misfortunes, accidents, and catastrophes. It's all over their hands and keyboards. Okay, people report the news, and the moment you were arrested for killing George, you became news. So we report the news. And I personally go through crime news. So what came after that, was your own doing. It all actually was your own doing. So if you wouldn't have put him in the suitcase and let him die, you wouldn't be dealing with all this stuff, Sarah. And even after all that's been said and done, theorized, hypothesized, scrutinized, and blasphemed in my case, still no one knows me. I think we kind of know you because we've seen the real you. But I will say, and this is the honest truth, I do believe you've got some mental issues. And I'm not making fun of you in any way. Please get help, Sarah. Because I believe you at least have bipolar or some sort of anger issues. Something. Because something's not right for you there. It's just not. So I really do hope you get that figured out. And I'm seriously being sincere for that. Saying that. And here we go. Now this is the part that was pulled out. My gold also runs deep for my prior attorneys. So I guess James Owens didn't want her to go into this, and I understand it, but I'll let you guys hear it for yourselves. Mauricio Padilla, who sold me the world with empty promises, then abandoned his responsibility as my attorney after taking 2.5 years of my life, when finally realizing he was in over his head, all while hoarding JAC dollars to fund his staycations with his family when in town from Miami, for having resources ready and available, not allowing me the client to ever utilize, which could have greatly progressed my case and perhaps concluded, only for him to decide water parks, fine dining, and choice hotels are more important and on the JAC's dime. If that's really the case, that he wasn't doing his job, then that should be investigated, Sarah. But this is the first I'm hearing about it. And if this is really true, and it's hard to believe you because you can't take responsibility, I would recommend you report that to the JAC. I forgive Frank J. Bankowitz. I'm sure he's torn up over this. I'm sure he's going to sleep much better at night after hearing you forgive him. For committing perjury to the judge and on court record about my attempts to be a proactive defendant and client, inquiring about my discovery, then trying to communicate with no answers or correspondence in any manner for 1 full year and 2 months before I was able to finally meet with him in the courtroom, only to receive his motion to withdraw. I don't know. I mean, he could really go after you for this, but I don't think it's worth his while. And from what I understand, he was glad to be done with you and get paid, so I think he'll probably just let this go. Frank J. Bankowitz is forgiven. Again, I think he's going to sleep so much better at night once he knows that you've forgiven him. For his greed in taking $15,000 from the JAC, who honorably aid indigent defendants as myself for taking advantage of and robbing the justice system by lying and avoiding clients, taking their money, and the JACs. Okay, so he had to show records and information that he worked your case, Sarah. You don't work for free, okay? People don't work for free. So if he was doing his job, and I realize you complained about him for a long time, but you complained about a lot of these attorneys, okay? But again, if he wasn't doing what he was supposed to be doing, they would not have paid him. So there was a hearing over it, and I watched it. Trust me, they gave the proper documentation to get paid. Winston E. Hobson receives my forgiveness. Again, I'm sure Mr. Hobson's going to sleep so much better at night now. Who also unethically perjured himself to the judge and on court record about all the progress and attorney work he did in my case for the 2 months he was court appointed as for his allegations of my supposed unethical requests, which meant me asking about my discovery and trying to have him file a motion for my lawful inclusion to my pretrial conferences, cited under FRCP Discovery Rule 3.220. I wanted to be included in my case, and no progress from being excluded by Bankowitz and Padilla over 3 years prior. Forgiveness is also telling me that he would return a week with my discovery, only to receive his motion to withdraw. In the meantime, still not receiving my discovery, and I filing my own motion, enabling me to go to all my hearings, including my pretrials. Well, Sarah, I think that he did the work. you didn't like him, okay? You didn't like Hobson, you didn't like Bankowitz, and something happened with these guys, and I think you verbally abused them and potentially other things. So it's hard for them to respect you when you don't have any respect, like zero respect for them as a lawyer. Continuous forgiveness in his greed and selfish intentions, also for robbing the JAC and indigent defendants of $15,000 more for nothing, justifying any work he really did in a handful of days he represented me as my attorney. Again, the JAC asks for documentation, and he had to prove what he did for work. And lawyers don't work for free, Sarah. And why do you even care about the $15,000 in these cases? You're not paying a penny of it. We are. Finally, and with all my gold received from this one, I forgive Patricia A. Cashman. Oh, I'm sure she's so thrilled. For her mean, snotty, egotistical attitude in not listening or caring that I finally received my discovery I kept asking for, which she fully withheld from me, citing her ridiculous, untrue reasons was because I saw with my first attorney 4 years prior, and while she being my present at that time attorney, I saw not one page of or any digital evidence of my discovery she prohibited me from seeing. Yeah, we all know you had a lot of problems with her. She tried to work with you, and you again couldn't play well with others. Patricia Cashman is also forgiven for admitting I had a right to a bond I asked her for, so I could actually utilize one of my rights as opposed to having them always violated as prior and still ongoing. Then her deterrence of all my opportunities to do so. You don't get a bond for murder, Sarah. She told you, first of all, it's not going to happen, but if they were to try to get it, they would need your brother to come to speak on your behalf. And this is the brother that's in the military, and he did not want to appear on television and publicly, in court. So that was explained very, very clearly, because, hell, I understood it. For all her lies, condemnation, gross unnecessary arguments, and anger that I asked any questions and wanted to understand, for her doing nothing other than give me an even harder time and request transcripts, then brazenly lie for over $16,000 for doing so, also from the precious resources provided from the JAC. I forgive Patricia A. Cashman for being a liar and a bully. These attorneys, I'm sure, couldn't be more thrilled that they didn't have to work with you anymore. And this is just another reason. I mean, you obviously hold in a lot of hate, Sarah, and I hope you can work on that while you're in prison. Forgiveness for all those who did not include me to receive my $15,000 share I worked for when Judge Kraynick forced me to be my own attorney to represent myself as pro se. Whoa. You don't get money because you're a criminal, a felony, and now you're convicted. So if you have to represent yourself while you're in jail, you don't get money, okay, Sarah? And to have Judge Kraynick revoke your rights to an attorney, I mean, that's a rare thing. You just were so difficult that all these attorneys had the same basic things to say, and they came out basically being verbally abused by you, from what I understand, and I don't blame them for withdrawing. And Judge Kraynick told you that if you can't work well with Cashman, that it was over. So it was over. And again, I think you were very, very lucky that Mr. Owens came onto the case, out of the graces of his heart. I think he did. Again, we don't agree on everything, but I have a lot of respect for him for that. I actually and finally got my own discovery almost 5 years later. Well, we can give you a round of applause for that. You were so happy you got your own discovery when you were pro se. File motions all prior should have done, making them the most expensive motions ever at over $46,000 between the 3 prior attorneys, Frank Bankowitz, Walter E. Hobson, Patricia A. Cashman. Would they have done so when supposedly representing me? The motions would have been priceless for the proper use of the JAC funds toward ethics, professionalism, honesty, and freedom. I honorably utilized my JAC resources and mentorship as a proactive, indigent defendant, avidly defending myself against the liars, thieves, and real villains in the criminal case. Who really is the criminal? Well, you are one, so I guess you could tell us. The JAC can hopefully include their forgiveness for them also. Yeah, you're trying to state that, reverse it and say that these attorneys were criminal, and that's just delusional. Sorry. Judge Wooten and Kraynick, I have great forgiveness for also in not protecting me and listening to my valid requests for judicial intervention so I could properly and fairly defend myself against my charges. I think they were fair and they did all that. So again, you're just pulling this out of wherever, Sarah. Instead, I had to defend myself against the attorneys, all appointed by the judge in court, against their lies and exaggerations, reasons unjustifiable why they were really creeping away from the battlefield and abandoning their professional duty as my attorney. Sarah, all these attorneys, the 3 that you mentioned specifically, all had the same basic stuff to say about you. So I think the problem lies in you. So again, I urge you to look in the mirror and work on yourself while you are in prison. Honestly, I truly do. Judge Kraynick, I forgive you for not giving me any opportunity to stand at your pulpit, to stand at all to explain the real, truthful side of the story. That's what the defensive side of the case is for, Sarah. I mean, your attorney, Mr. Owens, and you getting up on the stand. That's when you were supposed to tell us. And you did. You just kind of flipped everything around to the other side. I believe that the justice system, including yourself, would and should have done any vital homework on the already almost see-through attorneys, from being spread so thin and simply sending an email to care about their present workload, number of clients, trial schedules already in place before throwing another inmate, defendant, unknowing client on the heaping, unimportant pile of warm bodies. More taxpayer dollars could be conserved and less time consumed and wasted for everyone, regardless of what part they play in the supposed system of justice. My forgiveness is deepened for taking even greater time of mine away years by not caring to ask me anything about anything to understand, so you could justly render your life-defining judgments and withhold any more bias and prejudice. Sarah, he asked you lots of times. You remember too when you were pro se for that short period of time? I thought he was extremely patient with you. He answered what he could, and even Mr. J even helped you in some ways. Again, they were not supposed to give you legal advice, but they helped you. And I think that he did a lot. So this stuff to me is all in your head. Truly. Foremost, Judge Kraynick, I forgive you for kicking me when I was down and choking the life out of my constitutional amendments. Yeah, okay, I'm just going to roll my eyes on that one. Most profoundly, my 6th right to counsel as a result of my wholehearted case of my first right to free speech and being my own advocate, since no one else would be, and received a paycheck for. And all of my free speech, experience-driven letters, only for remedy in any collaboration, inclusion, receiving my discovery as an inmate, defendant, and client, not removal of any attorneys to cause more delays or any reason or excuse you may try to force on me and already have inappropriately accused me of doing prior with your heavily insinuated strategies of mine to try and deflect the glaring red flags, disappointments, and true crime in and of the justice system. That's a lot of words just thrown on paper, but yeah, I'm not going to go into that. I'll let you guys all think about that. To this day and all forward, I do not forfeit my rights, any of them ever, especially my right to be bold, outspoken, and right in my real life experiences with the legal and justice systems. You weren't there, Judge Kraynick, in anything, no meetings, phone calls, visits, and still took my rights and oppressed harder. I must now defend myself against you, praying you do not care too late as all the others and only retaliate further against me as a still proud citizen of the United States of America and freely, excitedly using my God-given rights to still try and defend myself, to stand all the way up for you to remove my freedom altogether by allowing and approving my stab wound, bloody body parts, R's, bumps, bruises, and all the rest of the beatings I endured. I hope you can finally see and understand just some of the pain from the extreme difficulties, obstacles, and unfairness, especially in my due process you have added in my criminal case and life as an inmate, defendant, and client. All is forgiven. Yeah. I'm sure he's going to sleep better at night now, Sarah. All right. And now he's going to talk about the detectives. This was also removed. For detectives Copacel and Lowen, I forgive their demonization, lies, blacklisting, coercion, law-breaking, solicitation of my case before I even arrive at the corrections department to be booked and fingerprinted. This can be seen in my unbeknownst an interrogation video where I asked what they were doing, what all the pinging was during their texting swarm, while I naively sat there waiting to be arrested, which they knew would happen the day before. For Copsel, for bald-face, lying on the stand to the judge in court on record, she didn't tell me to come into the station to pick up my phone. Why else would I go? I didn't even know about the surprise interrogation. I don't know, Sarah. It's just a lot to keep responding to you, but these detectives did their job, okay? And honestly, they needed to get you to come into the station because coming to there would have probably been a fight. So, is it possible she told a little white lie to get you there? Yeah, but she stated she didn't, and she stated that on the record, so, I believe her. I forgive them for also lying, how the news showed up to record my walk of shame. So you think that they called the news? I don't think that that's something they care about, but okay. Handcuffed and confused on camera. I forgive them for trying to make me lose from the beginning by stating the unquenchable wildfire of centralizationism. I don't know why I can't speak, guys. And distortion, ignorant hate, defamation, and greed by unlawfully broadcasting who they wanted the world to think I was by their schemes, learn lessons and fraudulent strategies from the school of manipulation and taking advantage. How much did they make off of me and still are calling it in, then removing the curtain to expose their personally twisted murdering monster? Well, that's a bunch of what the hell? They're doing their jobs, and you were more than willing to talk and spew lots of stuff at that interview interrogation. So they didn't have to do a lot of work, honestly, besides ask questions. So, you contributed to that. And yes, Owens did try to get that thrown out. And I mean, obviously, I think it was very legally done, and obviously the judge agreed, but, he tried for you, and it was all done kosher. It was legal. Also, my forgiveness and greater goal comes from wondering why nothing viable in my defense was taken from my townhome, aka the crime scene, to aid in my truth, such as the butcher knife, 5-prong garden claw, or hammer under the table together outside where George had easy access for use if I tried to leave or call for help while being held against my will during his rageful binges, or my bloody pillowcase stained from me being backhanded because I hid the magnum-sized bottle of vodka from him. I think she's getting that from Mr. J. So I think he coined that. Although, yeah. Why weren't any crime scene photos taken of holes patched in walls and doors, some doors missing knobs and all locks George removed, cracked windows, broken furniture, obvious unnatural destruction in my townhome? How and why were these missed, uncared and about or not questioned so I could explain some of my terror. Because they didn't exist, Sarah, they took the pictures at the scene. They don't cover up stuff. And also, when they cleaned the your a townhome, from what I understand, there was no damages, Sarah. That was stated from the complex maintenance guy. So I don't think it ever happened. You know? It makes no difference. All is forgiven. Again, we're all forgiven. Everyone's forgiven. So, hey, let her keep ripping everybody apart. But they're forgiven. Prosecutors, Mr. J and Mr. Cacciatore, my forgiveness is also extended for your inappropriate attributed motives for having to go through years of my pictures, videos, text to erroneously piece together your deceitful, damning version of what really happened and who I am. After so much availability and for so long, you were finally able to make the circle fit into the square. I forgive your antics, theatricals, ludicrous comments to make sure the world got their money's worth while watching the ignorant pitchforks and burning torches, hoping for the best from you, which is my worst. Instead of dropping the mic, Mr. J, you dropped the bat. Oh, she's so funny. For the yelling, finger pointing, and intense underlying to force your theatricals and fanatics to the jury while using imaginary space and adventures and fictional characters to blind and bedazzle them with your far, far away from the truth dramatization. I think that your story was a little more drama and fiction, but again, this is from the mind of Sarah. In all of your pieced together productions, I forgive you most for never seeing the light in people, their human goodness, humor, and big hearts. You wake up to seek out the opposite, to condemn, to take lives your own way. See the good that does exist in all of us inherently and unforced, even as proud Mr. J stated, they kicked the dog that bites. Okay. Mr. J, who kicked the dog in the first place? In my wisdom, it's usually best to leave sleeping dogs lie. They don't bite. Again, Sarah, I really, really hope you can come to terms with what you did. The state's job is to get justice for the victim and the victim's family. So that's what Mr. J and Mr. Cacciatore did. They were getting justice for George and the Torres family. So, and I believe they did a great job. And then she talks about the jury here. My goal goes out to the jury for not understanding my cracks from being blinded from the injustice and malpractice and all the judicial and prosecutorial errors, the very apparent violations of my constitutional rights during my case and the entire trial, which caused mass confusion and dysfunction. None of that existed, Sarah. I forgive the jury truly for being weary from this confusion and dysfunction, also from being hungry and tired and wanting to go home to their families after being away from in full capacity for 2 full weeks. I understand. Well, they did go home. They weren't sequestered, Sarah. They weren't sequestered. And I think they don't need forgiveness. They did their job. I mean, they came in there. They were supposed to watch the trial and, decide if you're innocent or guilty. And they did that. So, and I don't think they were wrongly influenced by anything. From this and their brash, misguided, corrupted decision, I was wrongfully judged a murderer instead of a survivor. For this, all is forgiven. For this, I still survive and stand tall, having an even the greatest opportunity to finally be understood in the Supreme Court for my appeal. I didn't lose. God just wanted me to win in a different way. Freedom and forgiveness. In the end, I forgive myself for not choosing my life sooner, for not being more brave, vigilant, bolder, and outspoken, stronger, mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually. Yeah, I'm not going to read all that. Well, the bottom line is that was a lot. And I do applaud, I really do truly applaud Mr. Owens for getting her to remove some of that stuff. Unfortunately, the fact that she sent it to the judge and has it posted, that's pretty much typical Sarah. Again, Sarah, I really truly hope you can come to terms with what you did. And by blaming others and then stating, I forgive you. I mean, that's just words. Anybody can say something. It's all about, do you truly believe it? Do you truly mean it? And you don't. And that's the problem. I mean, I'm sure you've got some things to say about Owens, James Owens, and you're not going to put them out. Well, maybe you will later. Who knows? But a lot of people made you upset. A lot of people made you feel like you were being mistreated. But it all started with you. And really, if you look back, it all started in February 2020. It all started because you wanted to attack George, and then when he was in that suitcase, you wanted to videotape him crying for his life because he couldn't breathe and tell him to shut the F up. If you would have let him out of the suitcase and then decided, if you guys were such a toxic relationship, which you obviously were, decided to go your separate ways, you wouldn't be going to prison right now, and George would still be alive. All right, guys, I hope you have a great rest of the day, and most of all, stay safe.